My guest today is Lori Jackson. She's a wildlife photographer from Northern Colorado. We got so busy talking about what led to her passion for the outdoors and her experiences there that we didn't mention where you can find her work. So throughout the interview, you will see her website underneath her name. I encourage you to check out her website and see more of her work. Enjoy. Lori, I have been a fan of your photography for a very long time, so I'm glad to finally have you on the show. And thank you so much for your lovely display back there.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today, Lisa. I truly appreciate it.
Well, sometimes, I always believe there's a story behind pretty much everything, whether it's the career we choose or the family we raise or the passions we follow. And in your case, your story has led to your hobby, but also part of your career. So if you would go back to that pivotal health crisis that really was the starting point for your wildlife photography.
Sure. Well, I've always enjoyed photography, Lisa, and it's always been a huge passion of mine. But in 2015, I had a stroke and it kind of came out of nowhere. And, you know, when you're a little over 50 and you're like, wow, I've had this major health crisis. Where do I go from here? I was starting a photography business at the time I had that health crisis, but it really kind of stopped me in my tracks and made me realize that you only have this moment in time, right? And sometimes it's just that day. And part of my rehab was I needed to be back out in nature, and I needed
So was
to.
that photography business you were getting started? Was that wildlife photography, or was that people?
That was
poses?
people. That
Okay.
was people. So most of our photography, we started out as portraiture and family portraiture and stuff. But when I had the stroke, part of my rehab process, I guess, was getting out in the nature. And it really is my reset button. It's where I can clear my head. It's where I just feel most comfortable and I'm most relaxed. And when I'm watching an eagle dive down and get a fish out of the lake, or, you know, a big elk coming at me or whatever, it just is amazing. And I just can't even begin
See, now
to tell
that is
you.
the sort of thing that I'd have to need to find another reset to get through but that's your calm, that's your place.
Yes,
That's
yes,
what kind of recenters you.
yes. And when I'm not out in nature, it's not good. It's not good.
So
So
you were rehabbing from your stroke. And so getting out in nature, do you mean you needed to go on walks anyway? So you were doing it out in
yes,
nature because that refueled you, and instead of walking around the block in your neighborhood. And we should mention you live in Colorado, as I said at the
yes,
beginning.
yes.
So you have this really wildlife playground.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I live in a beautiful little community in Northern Colorado, and we are so blessed to have a couple of native eagles nest in our area. So, and during this time of the year right now, during January to March, we usually get anywhere from, well, 10 to 20 eagles that will come through that time. And so those are normally a big focus for me.
Some people go their whole life and never
Isn't that
see one,
amazing? I know. And I always tell
or
my
not even know what
grandkids,
to look for, right? They could be looking
absolutely.
at one and not know that that's what they're seeing.
Absolutely, because a young bald doesn't look like a normal bald eagle, right? They don't. Actually, a lot of people mistake them for goldens or a great big hawk they see, you know, or something like that. But no, it's just absolutely amazing. And part of me being out in nature is also just learning, right? And just absorbing, watching them and learning their habits and what they do. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a passion to be able to see that and to showcase that. And just like you said, if somebody has never seen an eagle, and if they've never seen them dive into the water and get a fish out, I just can't even begin to tell you. Like, and my eagle shots are incredible. But Lisa, it took me hundreds and hundreds of hours of failing
That's what I was
before
going to
I
ask
got
you.
good.
When you think about, so the action that happens in wildlife,
Yes.
and you say, something's running at you, at some
Oh,
point you got to decide, did I get my shot, and do I get out of the way?
right.
You're in
Right.
its territory. So there's, I guess, just like any type of photography, well, not I guess, just like any type of photography, whether you're photographing people or nature or strictly sunsets, whatever it is, which is nature, but I mean, not animals, but sunsets, whatever it is, you have to hone that skill.
Right,
And for you, it's a passion combined with these lessons that you're learning.
right, right. And then too, I learn about nature, and I take friends and family out, and my grandkids, and have a couple grandsons that have really been interested in learning how to shoot the camera. And so we'll go up into Rocky Mountain National Park and spend time. And you know what? To me, that there is nothing better that I could do to spend my time than with my grandkids and teaching them about being in nature, because they're going to go off in their life and they're going to spend that time, and hopefully that's a way for them to refresh or just find that connection or whatever that might be. Nature is amazing, and life is hard, and it's tricky getting through, and sometimes it's just downright difficult. But if you just keep trying and you have this moment, and don't waste it, do not waste it. We lost my brother very suddenly 11 years ago, and that was my lesson was, you know what, you have today, and that's all you have. And then my stroke woke me up to that too.
Yeah, I say don't wait, right?
Right, absolutely.
What I say. And I think you can use any kind of analogy or any kind of grouping of words, but the ultimately is just about not waiting to do the things that you feel passionate about. And I
Absolutely.
know that there's trial and error, even the different camera gear that you use compared to what you were using when you were shooting people compared to,
Right.
shooting in nature. And that's a learning curve and all the things that you have to do to learn. But I think it's really refreshing when you can combine your passion with a way to offer it. And
Right.
sometimes when you find a way to offer your passion to people, you figure out a way to also earn a living. And that's a
Right.
beautiful thing.
It
So
is a
let's take a
beautiful
break. When
thing.
we come back, I want to talk about the next phase of your health that sent you further into the passions that you follow. So
Okay.
we're talking with Lori Jackson. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back talking with Lori Jackson. She's zooming in with us from Northern Colorado. What you see behind Lori there are just a small sampling, Lori, right, of your
Yes.
photography, your wildlife photography. And we were sharing with the audience before that it was a stroke that led you to get outdoors and refresh, and that was part of your rehab. And then you started pointing your camera at animals and nature instead of people,
Right.
or in addition to people. And then something happened again a couple of years ago that is part of your health crisis, ongoing, unfortunately, but also has given you an appreciation for the passions that you follow. So tell us about that.
Well, funny thing is I ended up having a heart attack, and I
Well, that's
ended
not
up
really funny, but
no, no, not really.
but I get what you're saying. I get what you mean.
Right. I ended up having it up in the mountain. Well, it started in the mountains. I was up on a hillside, and I was doing a photo shoot with a young boy, and he's like, Lori, I want to go up to the vista. And I said, okay, it's going to take me a minute. And I pushed too hard, and ended up coming down, and from the mountain, I kept telling myself, you're not going to have a heart attack up on this mountain. They'll have to fly you off.
Oh, did you feel like it might be a heart attack? You
Uh-huh.
had never had a heart attack to compare it,
No.
but you thought you were in trouble.
Yeah, I knew something wasn't right. Right. And I was so mad at myself, Lisa. I really was. I was just like, you're not going to have a heart attack, Lorianne. You are going to get off this mountain and you're going to be fine. And I did. I came down the mountain, and I actually went and did another photo shoot that night. And I know, right? I come home and I'm just like, I am not well. Things are not good. And I ended up having a heart attack, and ended up having an open artery in my arm for several weeks till it healed, and all kinds of fun stuff. And so anyway, not really fun stuff, but anyhow, in the course of all of that, we learned that I have an aneurysm in my heart between the two chambers, and it's really better. Probably they don't want to operate. Let me just put it that way. It's more dangerous to operate than just to see if hopefully someday, they'll all be good for a while. So, so we get back to that one day at a time, right? You have one day at a time. And you know what? I am going to spend every moment of it that I can learning about nature, being out in nature and enjoying it, and hopefully encouraging somebody else to follow their dream, because you know what? You only have this moment. And it's amazing when you have something health-wise hit you. You know, I keep thinking, my brother told me this once. He said, Lori, I am so blessed. I have 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 ears, and I have a beautiful heart. And you know what? As long as you have all of that, you have everything in the world. And he is absolutely right. And you know, if I can just go out and see that beauty and capture that beauty and showcase that, if that
Yeah, so you're
encourages
not
one
only seeing
person,
it, but you're capturing it, right? That moment in
right,
time, and you're able to share that.
right,
One of the things that I think about, I think sometimes people have a bucket list, and I'm not really big on bucket lists because that's the assumption you don't have tomorrow, which
right,
I get what you're saying. Like, let's live like, you're living like you don't have tomorrow, but you're not drowning your or emptying your bank account to go to
no,
some vacation that you didn't take that you wanted to take. To me, a bucket list assumes that there's this urgency. And if I knew I didn't have tomorrow, I would not be talking to you right now.
right,
I would be
absolutely,
with my kid and some other really important people to me. So
absolutely,
let's just instead assume, what if we're here 100 years? What if we're not? But what are we doing with that time?
right,
And how are we approaching that day? I call it the
right,
nouns in life, the people, places, things, and ideas
right,
that we give up on along the way for whatever reason. And then something jars us back into what's important.
right,
Could be a health crisis, could be the end of a marriage, could be the birth of a child, could be a change of a career, whatever it is. And it gets us refocused, right,
right,
on what is important. And I
right,
think that that's the thing that is what I love about your story is that sometimes we get those awakenings and then they get kind of muddied down by
right,
life.
right.
And then
Yes, they do.
we have to get another reminder,
Yep.
and then that gets muddied down. And if you can just learn the lesson the first time or so, then hopefully you don't get that jarring reality
Right,
check. Mhm.
right.
And so
So,
your reality check is pretty significant. I respect what you're doing with it. Let's take a break. I want to talk about the grizzly.
okay.
We'll talk about the grizzly. I don't even know. I would probably never go outside again if I saw a grizzly. Let's talk about a
Oh,
grizzly. My
okay.
dad once gave me a greeting card, and it had this a scared girl. She looked scared in nature. No, she looked at peace in nature. That's what it was. And there were all these animals, and there was no sense to it. It wasn't like she was in the forest. They were just everywhere. And he'd said, this is a place of, safety and peace, but I'm a city girl. Like, I know not to walk to my car by myself at night and have my
Right,
keys ready and not be on my phone and be in a
right.
well-lit parking, don't go to scary vans, by scary, like that's to me,
Street
that I know how to
smarts.
navigate, right? But it
Right.
makes me a little nervous out in nature, and I got to work on that. And you're inspiring me to do so. But
Oh,
let's talk
good.
about the grizzly anyway when we come back, and then we'll talk about the work that you're having much success sharing with your community. So
Okay.
we'll be back in just a moment. We're talking with wildlife photographer Lori Jackson. We are back talking with Lori Jackson. Lori, Northern Colorado is the place to be if you're one who's wanting to connect with nature, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. You can't go wrong. Like Colorado in whole is just an amazing state. It really is. You have every climate you could want, right? You have every geographic that you could want. You got prairie, you have, foothills, you have the mountains, you have high desert and dry desert. So Colorado's amazing. And there's
Where we
really,
live here is a lot like that.
yeah,
We have all the seasons. We have the high desert. We have beautiful lakes. We have,
yeah,
all of the things. People often compare the two areas to each other, where you are in Colorado and where I am in Washington State. So I have been where you are. I have met you in person, which is delightful. And yes, it's a beautiful place to live your life. So let's talk about some of the things, some of the animals you've seen in nature that would cause pause for me and maybe some others, but it excited you and you were able to capture it on camera. I know there's an elk that you've told me about. Let's talk about the elk.
Yeah. So it was so awesome. I spent 2 months following this particular elk's herd and watching him. And they call him the Big Kahuna. He actually has his own website and Instagram page, but
Who's they?
I don't know. Isn't that funny? Like I've had other photographers go, "Hey, do you know he has his own Instagram page?" And I'm like, "Really?"
You don't know who runs it. That's so fascinating.
Right,
I would love to find that
it.
out. That's like a detail that's going to bother me. I'm going to have to find out who that is.
Right. It's probably somebody up in Estes Park, I'm guessing.
Sure.
But anyway, he is magnificent, right? He is what they call a royal. And so that means he has 7 points on each side. He's probably between 12 and 15 years old. And he runs a pretty big herd. The year that I followed him, he had probably about 50 or 60 when we first started, and probably ended with about 40 maybe at the time that the rut was done. But he is absolutely amazing. And you know, when he was protecting his herd. And one of the images I submitted, you'll see he's coming through the trees. And just as he was coming through the trees, the forest light come in on him, and he was roughing up his antlers in the brush because he had just got done scaring off a young bull elk, you know. And if you look in the image, the elk is here, and off to the left of the elk in between the trees is a little doe. And honestly, Lisa, like, I kid you not, there's times I see things out in nature that give me goosebumps and bring me to tears. Really, it's just magnificent to see how they take care of each other and what they do for each other, and how this big elk takes care of his harem, you know, and all the little babies. And it's just, he comes up to him and
this
he's so
cycle
tender.
of life. Right.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, it's just amazing to have been able to see him and be able to experience that. And when you see an elk that size.
Was he aware of you?
No, because I have a really big lens.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to be pretty far away.
Yeah. So that's the thing too, you know, and that's one thing that makes me sad when I'm out in nature, that there's too many people that don't really respect the need to give them that distance. And that's how people get hurt, and that's how animals get hurt, because usually if they hurt the person, they're going to get put down too. And there's no reason to put anybody's life in danger, including yours, anybody else's. I've had other people come up on me on some of my moose images that I warned that they really needed to stay back. And because they didn't listen, pushed the moose up onto me on a ridge that I couldn't get down from. And literally he was 15 feet in front of me. I stopped, he stopped, and I booked to the, it was exit stage right. And, you know, and it was weird, Lisa. Like, he knew I wasn't there to hurt him. He was trying to exit a bad situation, and I was trying to exit a bad, you know, I knew could have been bad if he would have ran up on me.
And is that the picture that you're showing us now? Is that the same moose?
No, this is the elk that's back behind me.
No, the moose that you're gonna send me.
Oh, yes.
That I'm showing right now.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes, yes, that will be included. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but you know, it's just amazing, really, how people. You know what? I get the excitement. I totally do, because I'm the little girl that's going whoop, 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 you know, and happy. So I try and contain that to a certain degree, because when you're out in nature, you really need to be respectful of all of that and stuff. But that kind of brings me to my grizzly story, if you want me to say anything.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, my dad was treed by a black bear once when bird hunting, and definitely didn't have a gun that would take care of that situation. And he had dropped his knife. And so he was in a tree. And here's the thing about any bear story, or any story of my dad's, it never got bigger. The story never changed. And so that tells me the story was pretty big to begin with.
Right.
You know, the fish gets a little bigger every story. The bear could have
Right.
gotten bigger. Everything could have gotten bigger, but it didn't. And it was terrifying for our family. And that's a whole other thing. While we were waiting to get the call and his friends were trying to find him. But what saved him is his black lab was
Oh,
down in the brush. And that was just enough to scare the charging bear.
right.
So bears
Luckily.
to me are a little scary. Grizzly bears to me would be a lot scary. So tell us
They
your
are.
bear story. That's my short version of my dad's bear story.
Okay. Well, we were in the Tetons. My husband and I were in the Tetons a couple years ago. And, that was my goal. I wanted to see a grizzly, right? I couldn't wait. And I was hoping and hoping. And just so happened we come across a grizzly and he was in the sagebrush.
When you say come across, how far away are you and how do you come across?
Okay, so we're driving through. So if you've ever been to Tetons, usually you'll see 100 cars lining the road and something's along somewhere, right? So we were driving not too far from Jenny Lake and I told my husband, I'm like, something must be going on. There's a lot of cars on the side, pull over and we'll see. And so anyhow, pulled over and I started looking and I saw the grizzly and I saw him as he just broke through the sagebrush, right? And I was like, oh, it's a grizzly. I'm like, stop
and you
the
just
car.
keep your camera with you all the time,
Yes,
right? Probably.
yes, especially on that trip because that was the goal was photography.
Right.
So anyhow, but I told my husband, grab my monopod and I hopped out and I started running the same way the bear was running or going. And so anyhow, I get to a break in the crowd and stuff and I get a little ahead of the bear and I get over to the side of the road and the rangers are all there, by the way, trying to make sure people aren't being stupid and stuff. So sorry, I don't mean that, but
it's
what I mean.
Okay. We got that would be stupid to approach a grizzly.
So anyway, well, this is the bright little girl I was then. So the grizzly is coming through and he pops up, right? And just as he pops up, I go with my camera and the gal that's next to me, she goes, oh my God, did you get that shot? And I look at my camera, I'm like, yes, I did. And I went, and I hooted and hollered, right?
Oh.
And this country girl should be careful about hooting and hollering sometimes.
Yes.
Because I drew that grizzly right back up and he turned and looked at me and Rich got to me by that point and he like smacked me. He's like, shut up. The grizzly's looking right at you.
Yeah.
And so he was quite a ways away, Lisa. He really was. He was over 100 yards away, but I was absolutely amazed. So the image I'm sending you probably isn't the best shot of a grizzly, but it was the first one. And it is the one that like made me just my heart ignite. And I'm like, oh, I got to get out in nature more. I've got to catch more bears. I got to, anything I can capture, I'm going to capture. And
in your pictures.
Yeah. And then, right.
Yeah.
And then luckily, like the next year, I came across a black bear in the canyon going up to the park and a cinnamon mama bear and her baby bears. And that was a really fun story.
Well, you can tell just by how you're just sharing all of this. And I wish I had more time to hear all of your outdoor stories. You have to come back because as you take more pictures. And here's the thing, here's the other thing that you follow your heart, follow your passions. And my prayer for you is that your heart sustains you to keep living through those passions and following your heart and doing the things that so many of us put off for reasons that aren't good excuses. So you're a great lesson to all of us and you're incredibly talented and your work is on display in various places in Northern Colorado. And I will make sure people know how to reach you as well.
Bless you, Lisa. Thank you.
See more of your work. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And I wish you the best and hopefully I'll see you again sometime.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate you.
Take good care.
You too.